Okay, so it's quite dark out, so that sucks. But today we're going to be focusing on brake boosters. So this right here that I have is a 1989 Jeep Cherokee, so it has the single diaphragm booster. And when you're running 35-inch monster tires over here, the stock booster doesn't really cut it, you know what I mean? You can slow down if you need to, but you can do so much better. So we are going to be swapping this booster along with lots of other stuff with a better dual diaphragm booster. You can get a booster from I think a 95 to a 96 XJ Cherokee. That one's a dual diaphragm. Or you can go to a WJ Grand Cherokee booster, which is also a dual diaphragm, but the actual booster itself is shorter. So I'm going to do that, and it might even have more braking capability or capacity than the XJ one. So I don't know all the numbers, but I hear that people absolutely love it when they switch it over. Okay, so there's a little bit of modification, but nothing crazy. So we are going to loosen up these brake lines. Get yourself a good pair of flare nut wrenches. They're very useful. You're going to want yourself a 7/16 and a 1/2 inch. And the flare nut, it just gives you 1 or 2 extra sides, so it grips it more so you don't absolutely break these off. It also helps to use some PB Blaster or some other kind of something or other. So to disconnect the booster from the firewall, you come underneath, big old rat nest of bullshit. Back there, those are the bolts we're after. You got 2 on each side, and then you gotta figure out what is to come off of the actual brake pedal lever, but we'll undo those bolts first. Okay, quick tip. Here's the nuts you're trying to get off, they're 9/16. If you don't want to spend about, an hour getting them all off, get yourself an impact gun, a little swivel, and go to town. The upper right bolt's a bit tricky to get to, but with the little swivel you can kind of get in there. Okay, but before you take off all those bolts, it might be a little easier to disconnect the brake pedal from the booster push rod. So what we got here is a bolt, which is 5/8 on this end, and then you're going to have a 5/8, like, I don't know what this is, a protector nut or something, a lock nut, or I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's 5/8, and you can just whiz that right off with a wrench. And then this is a 9/16 nut. So when you take this off and this off, this bolt will slide out, and then everything disconnects. So now, if you come up here, you can see that the pedal is now free of our doodad. You'll have to disconnect this wire sensor right here. This is for the brake lights. And then after that, it should just come right out the firewall. So now, we should be free. Okay, there you have it. Alright, so we got our booster inside, and you're probably wondering, how the hell do you get this goddamn brake switch off? Well, it's actually not that difficult. This is just a little plastic thingy that just comes right off. If you can't get it by hand, you can use some needle nose pliers or something. And then this center pin should be able to push out. If the pin's out, your brake switch is free. So there's the whole switch right there. And don't forget your little spacer in here. Or, your bushing. So that's all the pieces right there. So now you'd have to transfer that over to your new booster. So here you can see the old and the new together. And see their differences. There's nothing too crazy. The length is about the same with the WJ, which is why I picked it, because the newer XJ ones stick out quite a bit further. So, our push rods look like that. So if you notice with this one, we'll have to drill it out and put a flat spot in there, and that flat spot's for the switch. This is extremely important that you get this the right thickness as the old one, or otherwise your brake lights will either stay on all the time or never come on. So, the cool thing is, if you do grind a little too much, you can just add a little spacer with duct tape or something like that and get it just right. But it will take some fiddling. So we got to drill that out. Okay, first step complete is stepping up the hole size from a 1/2 inch to a 5/8. Little vise and a hand drill, get you where you need to go, so, you know, drill that out. Now if we come in here, our spacer fits. Cool. Alright, so next part is going to be to machine the flat spot on this. So if you come down here, you notice that this is parallel with the rest of the rod. So we're going to make the other one parallel. Alright, so there's a little flat spot there. As you can see, there's not a whole lot that had to be done. The straighter you can drill your initial hole, the better for this fitment. But it does the job. And I just used a Dremel to grind it down, and then a file to get it just right and flat. So put our bushing in, and then you can line this up and see how well you did. I was using this end because it's round. So you just keep putting it on there and seeing how close you got and seeing until it's about straight. So there should be a slight little bit of pressure on it, but it does the job. So now you can go in here, put that through, and there should be a little bit of tension on this. And then you put your little plastic thingy on there. Ta-da! Now you have a brake switch. I have no idea how it works, but it's on there. Ta-da! We'll see how well we did when it's all put back together. Alright, so you can see for some reason this bracket back here can wiggle a little bit. So that's a bit of annoying. But all you gotta do is push the booster in. So we can check our clearances. It'll take some fiddling, but it'll go in there. So first thing we got to worry about is firewall clearance. So if you'll notice, it's not where it should be just yet. It's still got some room to move, and the firewall's in the way, only for a small section. So we're just going to have to bend this up just a little bit so it'll clear, not a whole lot. That'll be a first step. Alright, so you can see the clearance I had to give there. Just a little bit. Now that fits in there pretty well. I noticed that the booster hits on this big thing here. I don't know if that matters, if you need a spacer to help that out or whatnot, or if that'll change pedal position. But it sits there nice and flat now, for the most part. So once you get that bolted up and you're happy with where that sits, then we can mess around with the lines. And since this has flexi lines, this should be a piece of cake, but we're going to cut off these old bubble flares here, and we're going to cut off these flares here and put the flares onto these lines and reflare them and all that good stuff and bend them where they need to go. But going well so far. Okay, so I got the booster bolted up. I only tightened up the top bolt because that's the only important one for right now. That's just holding it so that we can figure out what's proper position and whatnot. So as you can see up there, I got the bolt slid through on the switch for the push rod. So all that's hooked up, all hunky-dory and whatnot. So this is where the pedal sits right now. And I'm not sure if that's higher than normal or not. I got in it and tried it, and it seems okay. I don't really see anything wrong with it. I think this is about where the gas pedal sits. I don't know if it sits a little higher or not. But, oh, it goes all the way down. If you had a spacer, you wouldn't be able to push it down as far. Oh. Alright, so we're going to come out to the lines here. These ones are actually not that hard to bend. You know, you can bend them by hand when you push them just right. But, quick tip for getting the hard lines out of your distribution block, you take a crescent wrench and you can hold the block like that, and then you can rack on it with the other wrench and hold it so it's not flexing around everywhere. And it actually breaks them free real easy, so that's a quick and easy way to do it. Alright, so once we get our tubes bent the way that we need them, we can take them off. So I only have that loop at the top because I couldn't unbend them because they were originally going up and I couldn't get them to twist or turn around or go down. So yeah, now we can get on to the flaring. You got to remember which fitting goes where. We're going to have a total of 4 fittings. These ones that go into the master cylinder are bubble flares. So as you can see, it's a bubble. So you can see it protrudes, sticks out. And these are also metric fittings, which is a pain in the ass because I only have standard flare wrenches. So it's kind of annoying. And our proportioning valve is going to use double-ended flares. So you can see that one goes in. So you'll have to remember which fitting goes where because there's also one big one and one small one. The smaller one goes in the front, the bigger one goes in the back. Alright, now we're in the shop. We're going to start flaring. So, here's the custom bent line I got. So I've made a couple practice flares just to see how good I can do this. Nothing terrible. It's hard to see, but... Alright, first thing we're going to need is a nice pipe cutter. This one's real smooth and it's got ridges in there. The cool thing with these ridges is you can use them to just cut off the flare. So by using those ridges, you can just cut the flare tip off so you keep practicing as much as you want and not lose a whole lot of brake line, which is nice. So we tighten that up and spin it around, tighten it up and spin it around till you cut it off, and that's how you get a nice square cut. Okay, so now we got our tube to length with our little cutter. Now we can take our fitting and put it on. The bigger fitting for the distribution block is going to go on the back, and the smaller one's going to go on the front. So just remember which one it is. Make sure it's put on correctly, and then we can get to work. So first we got to chamfer the edge a little bit and just round it off. If we look on this little instruction sheet, you can see at the top there's just a little chamfer. So we're just going to grind the edges down a little, make it smoother. We're going to take our handy dandy bench grinder, turn it up to like a low setting. We're just going to run it at an angle, and then just get the slightest little lip on there. Make it look all pretty. Alright, we got a nice light chamfer on it now. Nothing too crazy. So now we got our tool in the vise. I'm going to slide this into the 3/16 inch spot here. I took a little file and ran it across the top just to make sure that she's level and smooth. And then I took this little needle here and just made sure that the inside was round. Okay, so you're going to take your little tap set and you want to make sure that the flare is the same height as this little ridge. When it is, you tighten this side down first and then this side down so it clamps properly. So once that's good, take your little fitting, put it in the top, and then we're going to take our little crusher thingy and slide it on here. This one's cool because you just turn it like this and it locks into place, and you tighten it down. And you're going to tighten that until it's flush. Alright, so once that's pushed down all the way, then you can take it out and you can see what you're working with. So you should notice that it pushed it out a little bit. You got to make sure this is extremely tight, because if this is pushing the tube down, it's not doing its job. So this has to be as tight as you can get it to hold on to this tube. So next step is to take that little fitting off, and then you're just going to put this anvil on without any fitting and tighten that down, and that'll do the second part of the flare. Then when you tighten down that as much as you can by hand, you're done. There it is. So then you can pop it out of your little system and just sand the little burrs down a little bit so that there's no metal shavings. And there you have it. There we have ourselves a double-ended flare. Cool. Alright, look at that. We got some custom lines in here now. Check that out. Not the prettiest, but not the worst, you know. Does the job. Everything mounts up and looks good. So now we can take our fittings off and bleed out the master cylinder. Okay, now we're going to get a little mad scientist over here. So I've got the lines hooked up, and I got little rubber tubes coming off of them and going back into the tank over here. So what this is going to do is help bleed the air out of the entire system. This would be basically a bench bleed, but we're just not doing it on a bench. So we're going to fill this up with fluid and just keep pushing the pedal until there's no more air in the system. Okay, so I had my tubes hooked up and whatnot and put in here, and I filled it up with new brake fluid. I actually filled it up with old brake fluid and just pumped it around for a little bit to see if there's any dirt or crap in there. Then I pumped all the old fluid out and then filled it up with new and then did this. So you make sure the tubes are submerged in the brake fluid, and then you start pumping until you don't see any air in the lines anymore. It's hard to tell, but there's fluid in here. It's just, clean, so it's very see-through. Brake fluid is very hygroscopic, which means that it sucks up moisture in the air. So you want to limit the exposure it has to the air at all times. Like your new bottle, the second you're done with it, put a cap on it. Because water in the system, no bueno. So once this is all bled, you can put the cap back on and then you can hook your lines back up, and that got most of the air out of the system. Yay! So there we have it. Now our lines are hooked up and they're all ready to go. Cool. Now we just gotta bleed the brakes. Okay, so now we're going to bleed the vehicle brakes. So you're gonna start at the farthest brake line and work your way up to the closest brake line. If you haven't seen them before, the bleeder screws on the rear are located right there at that hole. And they look something like that. Sometimes they might have a little rubber cap on them. If they have the cap, you're in luck. You might actually be able to take the thing out. If you can't, step one is to beat the appropriate size socket on there. Use plenty of lube and try and use an impact gun. If the impact gun strips the thing, then you'll have to move on to step two. Get yourself a torch and heat up around the bolt for, 45 seconds to a minute, and use a little more PB stuff, and then get yourself some vice grips and clip it and see if you can't break her free. After a while, you should end up with something like this. Really buggered up thinger that don't work no more. So you'll have to get some new ones. So these are $2 at AutoZone. They're just some brake bleeder screws sold by Dorman. Part number is 13901. And they're 3/8 inch by 24. And they're 1.25 inches long. So now we got a replacement screw. We can screw that in there and bleed our brakes proper. So in order to make jobs easier in the future, I just got a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. So hopefully that'll keep the thing from seizing up in there next time I have to do that job. So I'm gonna tighten this in there. Okay, so here's my one-man setup. Got yourself your wrench on there, and you got a hose. And you make sure that the hose is a tight fit on the fitting, and you run it down into a bottle that has a little bit of fluid in the bottom. Make sure that the hose end is submerged. And then all you do is loosen the valve up, hit the brakes 4 or 5 times, and watch for the bubbles. And when there's no more bubbles, you're all good. This all looks like clean fluid, so I think we're nice and tight on this side. So I'm going to tighten that up, and then we'll move the system to the next closer, which will be this one, this side over here, and we'll just keep doing this until it's all bled. Easy peasy. Okay, so you should finish at the driver's side front tire. After you're done, you'll get some nice murky looking fluid, and you just keep pumping it until it's clear and there's no bubbles. So I didn't actually use a whole much. I mean, that's how much came out and that's how much I had to add, so nothing too crazy. And if I didn't refill it at all, I probably would have went from the top here down to about there. So you could have did it all in one, but it's good to check every now and then, top it off. So tighten them all up and give your brakes a test without any vacuum. Oh yeah, that's a nice hard pedal. Awesome. So, that means you did a good job. That means you'll actually stop when you hit the brakes. Yay! And if you want to go for brownie points, you can wire this in to a switch, like the coolant bottle low switch, or even if you wanted to double route it for the brake light or something like that, so you know when you're low on fluid. That'd be kind of cool to do too. Or make your own custom light, you know? That'd be neat. Alright, so everything's back together. I was finally able to drive it. Those brakes, oh my god, they're fantastic. I love it. You only have to push the pedal down maybe half the way for almost everything you need to do. But man, when you really push on that thing, you will slow down. I'm sure that if you had stock tires, you could easily lock up the tires. But I feel like a spacer might not be a bad idea, because it does sit really high. It's hard to get a good perspective, but you know, it's pretty far away from the floor. And after driving this, and you're used to doing this a lot, and then you go to like a Civic or something where they're both the same, you do this and you're like, where's the pedal? So yeah, a spacer would probably be something to try, but besides that, it's great. I love it. You can slow down in a hurry if you need to. So dual diaphragm booster from a WJ, good stuff. I like it. Lots of room, fits in with the water bottle just fine. Not really any clearance issues besides that little bit on the firewall. So if you've been thinking about it, you got big tires, or you want to slow down, do it. It's worth it. Real nice. Me likey. Huh, you're still here. Well, you guys following the current build. I know. You've been waiting a long time, and your patience will slowly pay off. No Stroke November. Next week. Be there.